Salem Town, 1692. A town surrounded by water and open fields. Accusations of witchcraft run rampant and citizens are being slaughtered. But what really happened, and why is it so important for us to know today? It's possible that the origins of witchcraft in Salem could be traced back to the person first accused during the trials, Tituba. Tituba was an enslaved woman who was born in South America. She would be kidnapped and sold into slavery in Barbados as young as 9 years old. Tituba would work as a house servant on Samuel Thompson's sugar plantation. In 1680, Thompson would attempt to settle his debts before his death. He would sell Tituba to Samuel Parris to solve his debt, where Tituba would once again be a house servant. She would often tell his daughter and other children in town stories of magic and her home in South America. That would be until Samuel Parris's daughter and her cousin would fall into a strange fit. Samuel, being of high social and economic status, would have a doctor come to examine his daughter, to which the doctor claimed that his child was being bewitched and put under a spell. Several of the children in town would report on Tituba's storytelling, causing all eyes to land on Tituba, Sarah Good, and Bridget Bishop. While she tried to defend herself, nobody would believe Tituba. Later in court, she would be pressured into falsely accusing Sarah Good and several other townswomen of witchcraft. While Tituba would be released after spending 13 months in jail, her accusations would cause confirmation of trouble throughout the town. Witches were there. Witches were cursing their neighbors. The town was in danger. After Salem Town's accusations were proven, they hung and executed the convicted women. The first woman to be hanged in the Salem witch trials would be Bridget Bishop. More women, children, and men would be executed for witchcraft in the following year. So many were killed, in fact, that the witches were dug a separate graveyard on Gallows Hill. Gallows Hill was the site where convicted citizens were executed, then buried away from town. This gravesite was built far from Salem Town and separated by a street and rock piles. The accused were separated even in death. Accusations were a death sentence. Those accusations could be based on spectral evidence, a now debunked way of proving a defendant guilty based on dreams or visions from the prosecutor or witness. There was little way to defend against spectral evidence, as even nightmares of a person could be considered solid. 19 people would be executed. 6 others would die in custody. This would result in a total of 25 deaths due to the hysteria. The dead: June 10th, Bridget Bishop. July 19th, Rebecca Nurse. Sarah Good, Susanna Martin, Elizabeth Howe, Sarah Wilds. August 19th, George Burroughs, Martha Carrier, John Willard, George Jacob Sr., John Proctor. September 22nd, Martha Corey, Mary Easty, Anne Poudier, Alice Parker, Mary Parker, Wilmot Red, Margaret Scott, and Samuel Wardwell. 25 brothers, sisters, mothers, and fathers died at the hands of the court. So what about the courts? What caused such unjust manslaughter? In the 1600s, Christianity was the most prominent religion in the world. Americans coming over from Britain would more likely than not believe in the Christian God. A widely accepted fact of Orthodox Christianity was that witches were servants of Satan, so it wasn't too far-fetched an idea that there were witches in Salem Town. Witchcraft was just as much a crime as murder, according to Salem. Such strong morals caused judges and citizens to become more and more biased to those accused. If you knew there were murderers in your town, wouldn't you make sure they got justice? As these judges became more widely accepted by the public, people began using spectral evidence, and more importantly, getting away with it. This involved accusing others based on dreams and visions. These people became witnesses, just the same as if they watched an attack with their own 2 eyes. Back then, if you were accused of a crime, you were guilty until you could prove yourself innocent. Most people couldn't, as the judges were biased, and many witnesses hadn't seen you commit your crime. If you fled, you would be hunted down across towns and states. This was the case of John Willard, who, when accused of witchcraft, fled Salem town. The constable alerted other towns to track him down. He was eventually apprehended at Nashaway and later executed. That was the reality of being an outcast or othered person in Salem, or even in the 1600s as a whole. Hunted, killed, forgotten. In 1789, the U.S. Constitution guaranteed the right to a jury trial in criminal cases. Just 2 years later, in 1791, the Bill of Rights expanded upon the defendant's rights. The Fifth Amendment also states that one cannot be indicted for a serious crime in the federal courts except by a grand jury. Justice Lois Brandeis in 1890 described the right to be left alone. Since 1968, all states have offered jury trials for criminal cases, as the Supreme Court declared it as a constitutional right. Our government has taken many measures to make sure something like this never happens again. They changed our systems, and they changed the rules surrounding defendants' treatment, innocent until proven guilty. We've looked back and seen how these faultless witches were convicted for nothing, slaughtered for nothing. Mass hysteria has pushed our legal systems to murder before. We have to stop it from happening again. Since all these advancements have been made, how can there still be problems in our courts? Christianity is still in large use in court systems. In the 1600s, Christianity was used more in accusations, reasoning, and sentences. Another example of mass hysteria is the confinement of Japanese American citizens during the Second World War. During that time, the U.S. turned on its citizens and made assumptions based on our beliefs. Panic caused citizens to be forced out. In the continuation of these practices, we tie ourselves back to the unjust persecution and murder of over a dozen innocents and the corruption that can so easily root itself in our legal systems. We as a society need to look back on our past and make sure we don't repeat history. The Salem trials were just a prominent event that pushed our people to make a change, to protect our people. Sadly, that's how history often goes. People must suffer for changes to be made. Witches are saviors. The witches of Salem ended up saving all of us in a way that could have never been predicted. Our courts may need change, but without the trials, they would be catastrophic. The Salem witch trials caused many rights and rules to be put in place in our courts. This happened because, in the trials, false evidence, biased judges, and rights violations were used against defendants.